IVM.
The problem with creating things is it's still expensive. That barrier is now if you do something cheaply, if I'm just, like this podcast is not an expensive thing to create. But if I want to go to the Chambal and meet a Don who's been pardoned by the government of India despite killing 22 people at a wedding, and I'm asking the question, excuse me? Then that's a difficult thing to do for an individual. He has to fund it, he has to sponsor it, he has to figure out if the guy will see him, he has to figure out if he'll get a return ticket, all those kind of things. So there's some content you can do easily and there's some you can't do easily.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast. My guest today has been voted by his peers as one of the 10 most influential people in Indian advertising and among its top 5 creative directors. Cyrus Oshidar is best known for his work at MTV, where he headed the creative and content not just for MTV, but also later on for VH1 and Nickelodeon. MTV was the original cool brand in the 90s and also in the early 2000s. And much of that credit goes to Cyrus. He did not just create a brand that you would literally wear on your t-shirt, but also set the tone in which young people were communicated to in India. I always considered Cyrus a person who was way ahead of his time. He's created some of the largest IPs on Indian television like MTV Style Awards and Roadies and many others. I want to speak to Cyrus about his time at MTV, the vibe back then, and also about his other brainchild, 101 India. Welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast, Cyrus.
Hi, Karthik.
Thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time. I've been waiting to do this for a fairly long time. In my opinion, you're the original creator of what we refer to as popular culture, right?
Well, it's a big label, but thank you.
I think it's the correct label. But when you go back to, was it 96 when you walked into
94, I think.
94? Yeah.
I'm not very good with dates. So at my age now I forget things, but I think it was about 94.
Right.
But 12 years out there.
Yeah. And, that was really buzzing, right? In many ways. Like we'll talk about the liftmen.
It was a great time, generally. I think there was a sense of creative freedom. There wasn't too much regulation. There was none of this kya bole, if you say this, then someone will object. If you show browns, this means something to this one, green means something to this one. None of that rubbish was there. It was much free. And there was TV, remember. It wasn't even sort of the internet. So you could have a laugh and people would poke fun at themselves, and it was much freer. And it was an interesting environment where, for me, it was great because MTV was new. Nobody knew if it would work or not. And they just said, just go and do something. And we did, and the first 3 or 4 pieces everybody hated because they said it was down market, because the liftman, for example, was one of those pieces. He wasn't some bright, shiny advertising object. He was being nasty about the brand. He was saying MTV is crap, But he was talking from his generation's point of view, which was about not understanding youth.
He was calling it the most terrible vomit.
MTV most terrible vomit, and that's my voice. So,
oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's because he was a great guy, but a terrible actor. So I couldn't get the anger out of him. So I ended up doing it. So and it was shot in my lift at home. Total cost must have been some $30,000 for the full thing. Me and a boy called Mayur.
Wow.
Tek Chandani. So we did the whole thing together. So it was great fun because it was that kind of thing. You get up and do it. You put it on air. Nobody complained. Nobody said anything. Nobody was censoring, triple censoring, quadruple censoring, self-censoring, saying you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't show this, you can't do that, water this down, don't say this. It was fun and free and full. And, we had things like sort of middle-aged couples doing S&M, which nobody understood. We didn't understand. We just did some crap, put it out. It sort of worked. It was very physical humor.
Right.
And it worked. And
it was very smart, right? So what is the vibe like in that office?
It was a nice vibe. I have to be... it was a great place. There was lots of politics as well, but it was a great place. And I think creatively it was free because I think Sunil Lulla was around at the time. And Sunil was... I think if he was the kind of guy that if he trusted you, he just let you do what you wanted. And... initially, when he saw the liftman and the chai boy and Malishwala, he was a little bit like... everyone was a little like, what is this? And I remember 1 or 2 people said, this is very down market. Who are these, it's not shiny, they're not like happy, shiny people singing, glowing from every pore and sort of representing all those kind of stupid advertising virtues. They were just normal people. There was a chai boy. Why would a chai boy sell a music channel? Even my father saw it in the UK and he said, very nice, but what does it mean? Which is, I was like, oh, good question. I was like, it's not really supposed to mean anything. It's more about, an attitude. So it was fun and it was free, and that was part of localizing it. And for me, I mean, I used to use the tag Desi Cool, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the street culture and make it cool, which I thought it was, because you had so much color, you had so many. I mean, if you shut your eyes, you're in India. Yeah, you can't escape that, because even if you're not seeing it, you're hearing it.
Right.
The street has a certain sound. People speak a certain way. You don't get these broken, crazy voices anywhere else, and not in such prolific amounts, at least, and not in your face all the time.
Yeah.
So we tried to build a lot of that. So the voiceovers, when everyone else was doing the sort of hello, how are you, British kind of voiceover, we were like, hey, this kacha, that kind of a thing. So we would do, and I would do most of the voiceovers because, it wasn't some high budget thing at the time anyway. It probably still isn't. But we had fun doing that, and it was the full creative process. We'd roll up our sleeves and we dived in. It wasn't you're the creative director and you're the copywriter. It was, Chalna, we'll do it. And it was a collaborative process, and it was a free, great time. It was a time where you actually felt things were happening. It was quickly followed by that whole internet phase, initially where people, there was lots of genuine hope in the industry, and it was free. I mean, MTV was free at least. Yeah. And then Channel V as well, I think. So I think and they fed off each other very nicely, I felt.
Very nicely. In fact, to your point, I think one thing was very clear, even for us, when we were in school and college watching it, that whoever is making this is having tremendous fun.
It was exactly that. Yeah. And you could see it was flawed. It wasn't perfect. The lighting wasn't perfect. Yeah. The models were definitely not perfect. We chose them to be imperfect. Yeah. The costumes were never fit quite exactly. It was all kinds of imperfections, actually. Even the short breakdown, kya hai, ye chalega re, it's funny. So it was that. It was almost what was the precursor to come for a lot of the sort of internet humor, which had that spontaneous moment in it.
Yeah.
But in a different way. But yes, it was exactly that. We were having fun doing it. I mean, as I said, for the liftman, Mayur and I sat, we had a wooden foot ruler with Johnson's tape strapped to one bedside light, which was the lighting for the lift, because there was not enough light. And this guy was in it, and the top floor woman was shouting, Maro lift ma, what are you guys doing? So it was that. It was really that. It was like a bunch of kids having fun.
Yeah. And you spoke about, Channel V and all of that as well, and how you fed off each other. I think one thing was very clear. Growing up, for me, it was also, and watching these, Channel V was very, very global in its approach. And MTV was very, very Indian in its approach. I don't know if that's how you see it, but that's how, we were seeing it back then.
I didn't see it like that so much. I just was very clear what I wanted to do with MTV at that time, especially the promos department, because initially I didn't run anything else. I was just doing the promos. Right. And for me, the promos was actually the spirit of who this animal is. So whatever you see in that environment has to be what MTV means. And it doesn't have to mean, it can be an open meaning, which is more interesting. Yeah. So when you have everything neatly explained and tied up, it makes the mind lazy. You don't want to know more. So sometimes, the graphics, God knows what people thought. Ye kya hai? So, and based on that also, I mean, there was a party one of my friends had gone to, and he was chased by one of the boys from the promos department, actually, Parag, and he was chased by this guy who kept asking him, yaar, wo music video mein wo alligator kya hai? Kyun hai? So he was like, who's this guy? What is this video? What is this alligator? And apparently there was a sort of a rock music video where some guy was wandering around. There was some crocodile chasing him or something. I don't even know what.
Right.
But it got me thinking that, people sometimes take these things very literally. So we ended up actually doing something called Bolti Band, I think, which was one of my ideas as well, which was about almost getting people off the street to see a video mein kya ho raha hai, to give it some sort of context. So we had like Manson, this ridiculous video, worms coming out of his thing. And we showed it to, for example, two security guards from UP. Yeah? They started chanting some Chalisa and they said, Rakshasara, and one guy ran out of the room. And it really showed that there's so many Indias and that, we don't actually understand it. And that's the whole advertising sort of targeting and audiences vibe, which we live every day. But sometimes there was a time when we would use that, we would use the differences within our cultures to actually have fun. Now we we're very, very, very careful about every single thing we do or say, with the result that, you can't tell a joke, or you can tell a joke, but you have to remove the laugh from it. So, it's a bit, it's gone a bit nuts, I think. And I think as a people, I think we're probably more react to these little things than anyone else. But
right.
But anyway, right now everyone's pissed off everywhere across the world, so who knows?
But one thing I feel has also been a constant for you across MTV, and then even more recently now with 101 India, is your preoccupation and your romance with all things Desi.
Yeah.
And very Indian.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the mythological Indian, but the everyday.
Yeah, it's
Indian,
the everyday Indian.
The culture
the street,
at the core of it. Where does it come from?
I don't know. I think because I've lived abroad most of my life. So when I left India when I was 8. I was in 11. Sorry, I was in boarding school in Ooty in a place called Lawrence Lovedale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A beautiful place.
Yeah, well, unless you're in it. But as a kid away from your parents, it's not like the ideal environment at 8 years old, to be in boarding school. It's a bit scary. So I was there, and then I went to England at the age of 11, and I actually spent 15 years there, and I missed India desperately. When the plane would land back in Bombay and the doors would open, that first blast of hot air with that slight whiff would come through, I'd be like, oh. So, I was in England against my kind of wishes, I think, and I really missed India, and I loved India because it was so diverse, because there was just so much to see that you could walk down a road and there's always something to see. You walk down the same road, 5 minutes later you're seeing something else, someone else. When you live in a place like England and it's very sanitized and push button and it's the same, it's so uniform, it gets really boring after a while. But in India, a simple walk down the street every day is a different experience. There's some other guy, be someone fighting with someone, the guy cleaning the cab would be fighting. It's a new thing every day. So I used to love that. I love it a little less now because everyone's just fighting with everyone right now. It's become like the angriest place. Everyone's like got it in for someone else. So that's sometimes a little worrying, especially when you read the papers. This morning is no exception. But I used to love that. I used to love the vibe of the street. I used to love the sound of the street. I used to love the buzz. Even when I was very, very ill, sometimes I used to just go and sit near the window and just feel comfort in that general sense of humanity around you. And in India, it's full. India is full. It's full of sound. It's full of every sensory experience. So it was very natural for me to be able to try and put that into an MTV in whatever form, whether it's changing the voiceover so that it's, not sounding like middle class England for some reason, which every ad used to be, brought to you by. Okay. So it just became like, and I would take it the other extreme. Yeah. So where it was sort of very posh, I would make it the opposite. People would scratch their heads, I would scratch my nuts, as it was. Sorry. That kind of a thing. So it was that's very much the way it is. It's a flawed, slightly cracked, imperfect, but that's beautiful as well in its own way. So I used to love that, and that's what I would draw on always. Cracked voices, strange cracked people. It was always about the circus of life, which I actually love.
Which is beautiful. But what MTV stood for, right? Like for the people in college at that time, MTV was cool. Was really cool.
It was a T-shirt. It was what you want to wear on a T-shirt to make you feel cool. Now it's something you probably, well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but maybe it's not as cool as it was. I don't know. It's a personal opinion, but the brand and the environment, therefore, was the most important. And that's what I would spend my life focusing on. Because if you weren't cool, if you weren't a friend, if you weren't a confidant, if you weren't providing something to young people, then why would they bother? And that sense of irreverence, that sense of young people in control, and that sense of their attitude coming through, the sense of their irreverence, the sense of them having their own shows through our shows as well. Let's not forget Natasha Malhotra played a big part in the whole programming part of it at that time. So the sense of, young people like VJs becoming sort of areas around which you could have a cause as well as be an entertainment icon. Those were all very new things. And then it was empowering for young people in a very nice way. MTV was never nasty. It was just fun. Yeah. It was a little kida. It was a little teasing. It was a little, And I remember a lot of the movie stars would not want to come on, yaar, tu mazak karega, wo brocha mazak karega, all that. How old are you?
But today when I speak to a lot of brands, who want to be that, right? They really
it's much more difficult now, I think.
Why is it?
Because you're competing with everything. You're competing with the internet, you're competing with influencers, you're competing for noise, you're competing for time. You could rather be playing football or watching porn or doing something else. I mean, the thing is, you're competing with everything and everyone. You're competing with relationships. So entertainment now is time. And that time can be spent in so many different ways, mostly online, on the phone, on Instagram, on social media. So media itself, that whole media fragmentation thing, it's a very real fragmentation because it's in your phone in your hand. And you have the choice to go anywhere and do anything, and you have the choice to put that down. You can hang with your friends, play football. So you're competing with everything. And at that time also, remember, we had the advantage of being new and fresh. So that, it wasn't quite first mover, maybe, or was it? I can't remember. But that was a big advantage. And it was just TV then. There was no internet. There was not a million people clamoring. It wasn't TikTok where there's 1,000 stars of TikTok now, I mean, right now everyone's a hero for anything.
Right.
But
I also think you're being a little modest in this. This is also...
No,
even without too many things competing for time, I think, there was a pulse that you had of, what was going on the ground.
See, I think, Karthik, with all these things, most things are created or driven by one or two visions. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I don't even think it was a vision and all that at that time. It's just doing what I enjoyed doing and what I thought was fun and funny. And, there was some thought obviously in the graphics. There was a lot of thought that went into packaging. So, for example, Made in India, the idea was a baby factory. I remember that we produced, one of the things about India is the population. So it became like, the show was called Made in India. So we made it a conveyor belt with babies coming out. And then they were holding Dudu bottles. I think the mothers was like this. There was a line of mothers holding Dudu bottles as these babies came out in this conveyor belt. And then the Breastfeeding Society of India complained.
Really?
So I said, boss, we can't show breasts, no? So that argument didn't go down too well. So finally we ended up because we changed it. We also quite, we said that, look, if it is affecting someone, if it is bothering someone, if it possibly is having the effect that they say it's happening, because MTV was a big cultural force, whether we like it or not. So we changed the Dudu bottles to rattles. Finally, I mean, it cost us a lot of money, but we did it. But then after a while, now, how many people can you listen to? Because right now it would be, right now MTV would not be able to happen, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't think so.
Given the current environment, even though Roadies gets away with quite a lot of...
We'll get to Roadies
MCBC and all that.
In a bit. But you spoke about the visual design. There was also a very Warhol sort of visual language. I'm not saying it was very Warhol inspired, but it was very unique in how it was, right? Visually, I think even the lift, man, your angles and your cuts and everything, or even gaseous clay was very different.
Yeah. But gaseous clay was made by Rohit Vatsa, but written by me. And it was based on an old, it's a Parsi thing, Ada Pada, Kaun Pada, Mamaji Ka Ghoda Pada, Dham, Dhus, Keri, choose something or the other. So I just thought we'd take that. And I remember going to my daughter's school and this headmistress saying, what are you doing to the kids here? I said, it's only passing wind here. It's not some, we're not destroying their minds. There's worse things happening out there, it's just farting. Everybody does it. And she was like flabbergasted. She obviously didn't. So, and these things are always a combination of a few people coming together at the right time in the right place. I can't say it's all me. It's not all me. If it hadn't been for Parag, Ruchi, Mayur, Bhattu, Bhatula, Manna, all these people, it wouldn't have happened. So it was a collective. Sure, there was a leader and a driver of it who had a clear kind of a vision, but everybody chipped in and it became a visual language. It became an arts project. I was asked to do something for an art exhibition that went across the world about contemporary Indian art, which was like, wow. So I wanted to do a Hath Gadi with a bunch of TVs on it, which were not working except for MTV, which was playing some rubbish that we'd made. But they made it a pawn shop. There were two options. The other option was a pawn shop with a TV playing. I think that was just easier to carry on. So they used that. But that became an art exhibit. And it actually was sold or bought. And I was like, eh?
Yeah.
So
now thinking of it, I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm thinking... If back then you had the merchandise thing going with MTV.
Well, we did, we made Liftman t-shirts and all. We were doing this, I think, maybe before a lot of the major brands nowadays were.
Right.
But they didn't actually put their business hats on enough. And because there could have been a huge revenue opportunity for them as a TV channel. But we didn't. We gave away lots of Liftman t-shirts and all the rest. We never did it as an opportunity until much later when they started doing weird things like perfumes and all, which never really quite made a lot of sense. But
I would have loved to walk into an MTV store back in the 90s. And,
when it was cool. But,
yeah.
doing it afterwards when it wasn't so cool was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
So someone should have picked on that. I guess we should have, but we were too busy having fun.
On that note, we'll take a very, very quick break and we'll be right back on the Filter Coffee podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. You know what? Not just an amazing week. This is going to be an amazing year. We're looking forward to all the stuff that we're going to bring you in 2020. Please remember to fill out our survey, ivmpodcast.com/survey. That's going to really help us know what you guys want from us from 2020 as well, right? I mean, we'd really like to hear from you. So please do fill out that survey. It would be very helpful. Also, would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week. We have Intel, Cambly, and Storytel. Also, if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's a week of milestones. We have a couple of milestones this week. Geek Fruit released the 300th episode this week. What a journey it's been. Join Tejas and Dinkar as they celebrate this milestone by talking about HBO's new hit show, Watchmen. Actually, surprisingly, at this point, Geek Fruit is the second oldest show on our network, so it's definitely a show if you haven't checked out, please do check out. Another milestone that we have is it's the 50th episode of our Kannada show, Thale Harate. So definitely do check that stuff out. And as for the rest of our regular programming, on Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus talks to actor Neil Bhopalam. On IVM Likes, Abbas Alika, Ritika, and Madhuri give their weekly recommendations, discuss their favorite short stories, and talk about our new storytelling show, Tapri Tales. On Golgappa, Trupti is joined by Nikhil Mahajan, a director who carved a niche in the industry through his film Pune 52. He elaborates on the craft of storytelling and what goes into making films for a living. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunetro talk about their experiences of having lived in different cities. They share how different cities have had an impact on their queer identity. On Litnama, Lakshmi talks to Sonia Thomas about her work at BuzzFeed, the meme culture, internet as a space for women, TikTok videos, and digital literary trends. On Tapri Tales, Mallory tells the story of a mother who tries to understand YouTube trends and garners a dream of having her own YouTube channel. And with that, let's get on with your show.
Welcome back to the Filter Coffee podcast. We're speaking to Cyrus Oshidar and we're talking about the art of creating popular culture. As I said that, I was also thinking...
There's a song called Stumble Into Grace. It was a bit like that.
The other thing which you have, and I've heard a lot of interviews of you over the years, and you've also been very, very modest about that as well, is, in the second part of your stint at MTV, where you're not just doing promotions, but you're handling the entire content piece of it.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that as much.
Oh, really?
No. Because it was for 3 channels now.
Oh, yeah.
So with 4 ka 10, was like, okay, bargain basement, get this guy, chalo, itne paise mein sab kuch kar lo. It was a bit like, come on, dude. Listening to VJs whining about pay and all the rest of it. After a while, it's like, no. So I didn't enjoy that. That fundamental rule, I think, is for everyone. Do what you really want to do or do what you're good at. Focus on that. We chase, title and position and, I want to be the SSVP and VPs, whatever the crap titles we get, So it became a bit of that. But yeah.
But nevertheless, the stuff you had created in that space, right, which is whether it is a Style Awards or whether it is roadies and all of that, they were all things of extraordinary scale, right? And we spoke about this before the show began, and many of them were, and this is a constant for most of your work, is significantly ahead of its time. Right.
Okay, thank you. Not sure if that's a compliment. Means nobody watches it.
but it's true. I was speaking to a few people, who worked with you back in the day, and when I asked them, tell me something interesting about Cyrus that I already don't know. They used to. Many of them said something which was actually had a common thread, and they'll be like, you walk up to Cyrus and tell him an idea, right? And he will blow this out of the water with the way he's thinking of it. He'll bring in so much scale to it. It'll become an unbelievably large idea.
Well, that's where this internet thing allows us to do that through this social media amplification. But it is, Kipling said whatever, something about he always has in everything he thinks the help of 7 good men, who, what, where, why, and when, or something like that. But I always feel that when we think of solutions, we always think of, and we're trained to think the same way. We'll think the same way ourselves. We have to sort of try and stop ourselves thinking the same way, but it's instinctive. We never get away from it. So with me, the attempt is always to add a layer. So if I have an idea, then I say, okay, who? So for example, wanted to do a food show on 101 India for the sake of argument. And I was like, okay, now everyone's doing street food, but these guys are saying do street food because we may be able to get a sponsor. I was thinking, but how can I do a different street food show? Who can we use on the street who's really like different? Who knows the street better than anyone else? And then I thought, maybe the local gunda. So I said, can we combine a show with crime, like the local street guy and the food of the street of that area? I mean, it doesn't have to be the street of a city. It can be a street of Jambal even. And that's how Dinner with the Dons as an idea was born. It was like, who knows the streets better than the guys who run them? So let's go and hit them for food. And it became our biggest show on 101 just in terms of reach. So,
and it's my most favorite show of the last decade. I think it was brilliant.
Really? Yeah, but the thing is, we wanted to do more of that. And but it's very difficult to get sponsors because people, things like, nahi, isme criminal hai, so how can we sponsor? I'm like, what are the movies you're sponsoring? What are these guys doing? They're blowing everyone up. Everyone's shooting everyone up. Yeah, I mean, it's the same stuff. Just because this guy is really a Don or ex-Don or retired Don or whatever, it's still a story. And you're sponsoring stories. You're sponsoring what are you sponsoring? You're sponsoring a property. So I found that a bit tricky to deal with, but it hasn't changed.
I think that's a good example, right? Like that's... it's one thing to have an idea of street food and then adding the layer of Don. And there's another thing to actually make it happen, right? How did that pan out? What are some interesting experiences during that show?
See, the thing is, I had the idea of doing it years ago. Yeah, ages ago. It's something I've been thinking of for those reasons that I described. And then here, when we were given the money to run 101 India, we just do basic, as much research as we could garner because, it was not a high-end operation in terms of masses of money. So we would choose a few key IPs, but we had to spread it across, travel, food, blah, 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 a lot of things. So the attempt is always to try and create something that's slightly different so that you're known for that. Yeah. So slightly left of center. And also to try and make the fringe mainstream. And those were two of the sort of guiding principles of 101 India because I believe from the beginning that the middle ground will always fill up. We know that Bollywood, cricket, music, mustis, we can all repeat it like parrots now, all these things that young people like, so-called. But it always ends up being versions of the same stuff. Now, how many interviews, how much gossip, how much who's doing what to who in Bollywood was hoga, people will watch it, you'll get the most views, and then you'll get the sort of... So I stayed away from that intentionally as a proposition and said, okay, left of center, unseen India, fringe to mainstream. Why aren't we talking about the Kerala boat race? Nobody even knows about it in this country, and that's a huge cultural thing. Yeah. It's a phenomenal property. Why isn't that being sponsored? Why isn't that the IPL? Why isn't that the next Kabaddi? I even went to there and pitched it to him. I think someone is doing it now. But for me, that was such a great opportunity. And we did a show called Tap That around that. And then we'd actually pitched a couple of ideas like that to Coke afterwards where we'd, because the boats itself are created. There's a story around the boats, how they're made. There's a competition between families or rivalries. There's so much. It's such a deep property and something that's so inherently Indian. Yeah. That it would have been such a fantastic thing to modernize that. So you would have got something much more layered than Kabaddi. But, you have to explain it to clients. And clients will say, lekin November mein mere ko, 200 crate bechna hai, to iske sath kaise hoga? And like, okay, do you want a property or do you want a promotion? So sometimes, even, what it's like, we're in the business. It ends up starting with good intentions and becoming something else.
The America's Cup is such a huge television property.
America's Cup, Oxford and
it's such a boring thing to watch.
This is probably the biggest or the second biggest, I don't know, boat race in the world.
Right.
And you've got a large captive audience in the south and you've got the same captive audience in the Middle East.
Right.
So for us, it was a no-brainer. And we pitched it. I pitched it to Star, but who knows? Maybe it's a bad idea. I don't know. I don't think so. Because I think that's the beauty of India, all these other stories, all these subcultures that we have within us. And where else do you find all this? I know it's easy to say diversity and it's a cliche, but it really is true. Look at us in this room. There's you, there's me, there's him. That's great, man. Isn't it great?
Yeah.
And instead we're just beating ourselves up every morning. You read some other rubbish about some...
Yeah. How did you keep in touch with India? That's also constant in this conversation. Did you travel much?
Hindi movie songs. I used to come back every year. For 3 months. But I always loved it. My family was here. I used to come back. I used to travel. I took 9 months off and traveled through India between college and school.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So in England, you have to do 3 months extra for Oxford and Cambridge, the exams. So my dad was a good Bawa who wanted me to go to Oxford or Cambridge, Dikra, then that would make his life and all that. So I thought, I have to do this shit. No, I did it. So I did the interview, I messed up, did the exam, did really well. I got a scholarship, believe it or not. I didn't. In economics. It's like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like, what?
For the record, you went to the London School of Economics.
Yeah. So, but this is how I got there. So
right.
First I was going to go to Oxford, and then I messed up the interview. There were like a panel interview of people, and one would ask you a question. Before you answered, the next would ask you a question. You felt like a deer in the headlights jumping around. I completely messed it up. So I ended up at the London School of Economics, which was my second option, which was never good enough for Dad, but it was great for me.
It was not good enough?
No, he wanted Oxford. He wanted me to speak like this, you see. So I ended up at the LSE, and all my friends there were Indians, yeah. South Asians.
You mentioned you traveled for about 9 months.
9 months.
Where did you
go? Rajasthan, Kashmir. Yeah, I spent actually a month in Kashmir in Gulmarg at a friend's house. I don't know if we can go back even now.
Yeah.
But there's pictures of me floating in Dal Lake. I remember once going to a houseboat and going to the loo and flushing, and then 2 minutes later seeing something that looked, hey, isn't that mine? I was by the window. and then I was thinking, oh my God, yesterday we were swimming here. So all over in Rajasthan, and they ended up in Goa.
Wonderful. We sort of skip timelines in this conversation, but somewhere you exited MTV, and then you were doing a bunch of things, and then 101 India sort of happened.
We left. The founder of MTV, a guy called Tom Freston, had rung me up once. I was running my own small ad agency called Bawa Broadcasting, making enough money, but doing advertising, which I don't really enjoy. And he said, would you like to do something interesting? And I said, sure. He said, do you mind going to Afghanistan? I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. So I ended up going to Dubai for a while, and there was a company called Moby, which was part owned by Fox. And we actually helped packaging some of their channels, and I ended up working on a few campaigns for them. And that did very well. These guys were quite happy. So when I came back, they said, look, we'd like to do something in India, but not in the TV space. It's too capital intensive. Do you think the digital space is worth it? So I said, yeah. And I'd always loved Vice. And I just felt that there was a space here for something Vice-like, but possibly more in the lifestyle space, without getting too much into the politics and all the rest of it, because you know where that heads nowadays. So I ended up doing that. And so that's how 101 India was born.
But what did you set out to create when you...
An alternative platform for young Indians, which was based on the kind of narrative that wasn't seen so much here. It was based on non-fiction primarily. So we didn't have the kind of... there's so many incredible stories in India, man. You take any state, you take Punjab, you got it's a piece in itself. Endless.
Yes.
Culture, history. I mean, it's amazing. So, and it's the same with almost every state. Yeah. So for me, and we weren't seeing enough of those stories, especially not for young people. So the 101 came from a sense of a quick guide too. So it was like a short form. At that time, it was more short content. 4, 5, 6 minutes was that was the way to go apparently. So we ended up doing basically engaging with young people about their own culture, but finding offbeat stories like greyhound racing in Punjab.
I remember you did a story on hip hop way before it became
cooler. We did a story in hip hop,
in Punjab and in
all over hip hop homeland. It's called. So we did it in different places, and the idea was to do an anthem at the end of it.
Right.
We did an anthem for the Northeast that went completely apeshit, viral over there. And when the producer went to, I think he was in Meghalaya or something, and he was playing in some of the shops, and he was playing it on the phone to me when he called me. Sir, listen to this. So I mean.
Yeah. No, I was listening to Suresh Alvi's story in one of the podcasts I listened to. It's called How I Built This. And that was a very crazy story. It's a lot of drugs and a lot of starts and a lot of failures. They want to start a magazine.
This is more boring. Vice was a magazine first.
Yeah.
And there were 3 guys. Right. Shane, Suresh, and I think another one who, a Scottish guy or something, I can't remember. So, and it's funny because the company that funded us ended up distributing Vice in the Middle East, and the Vice team was in our office when they came here before
really?
They started out. Yeah, they went through all our IP and they were saying, this is great. And we were actually giving them tips. We were hoping they'd buy a cert, of course, which is why we were being nicer than we needed to be. Yeah. Yeah, because I feel there's a need for that kind of content. You know,
but there was a very counterculture sort of a start. And I think...
bits of counterculture, bits of lifestyle. You know, there was motor bicycle maintenance, there's restoration, there's dinner with the Dons, there's tribal cooking. So it was a look at India through different things. So if I want to go to tribal India, I'd do it through food. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a big canvas, and we started off, I think we made a lot of mistakes, but I think we did a lot of things right. But it was too early. Nobody knew what was going on for 3 years.
If you had to do it again, what would you do differently?
I would do less IPs. I would focus on a few and build those out into bigger pieces. I would have produced less. I would have spent less money. And I would have tried to get in sponsors quicker. And even if they were... try and get a sponsorship in fast. Even if it was for no money. Just as a sign. Because the revenue piece did quite well, actually. But it was, again, too little, too late. So it kicked in we only hired a sales team after year 3. So these were basic kind of mistakes. That it was a collective mistake, I think, from management right down. So I think that's what I would do differently. I would know how to do it now. I would do it much less. But I still think there's a lot of value in doing something like 101 India, probably now.
More than ever,
yes,
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. And if we're allowed to tell some of those stories, the reason we didn't go the Vice route is because, political stories or opinions are slightly, tricky in this current environment.
Yes.
So staying, it's someone else's money. So I can't take those risks.
You've had a very strange relationship or a very interesting relationship with brands, right? You started off in Ogilvy.
Yeah.
And I think you've written copy for
British
Airways.
Yeah, I was the only one
BPL.
allowed to write copy for British Airways for a while.
What was going on there? Why were you the only one?
Copyright.
Oh, okay. They loved you so much.
Well, they liked what I do. See, British Airways was very anal about it was all produced abroad. So then there was something called, there was a contest that they had. So they'd ask for some examples of writing, and I wrote something pretty stupid. It was just like for the winners, it was just like, did you kiss the postman? ? Was the headline. Nothing major, but they loved it. They said, who's this guy? Let's write some more. Can we get him to write it? So I ended up writing all the British Airways copy only. And I was the only one allowed to do it for a while. Yeah. Just very understated British kind of humor, which came easily to me because I lived there for 17 years.
Of course. Yeah,
so that was it. And then I went to O&M 3 or 4 years. I worked with Prashun, Sonal. I mean, not Prashun, Piyush, Sonal. And then Publicis with LC and Ashok.
Yeah. But, and then you created Roadies.
I wouldn't take the credit for that totally. I would take part of the credit for it. And I'll be honest, it's not my favorite show. I don't like reality TV. I think it brings out the worst in people. And I don't like that. Maybe it's just being older now that we can look back on that. But I think there is a show called Road Rules in MTV globally. Yeah. Roadies was an adaptation of that. It was a localized, simpler version of that. Because Road Rules has things like, guys jumping off bungees over a live volcano on a motorbike and stuff like that. So, safety standards and all, wo nahi jamega. So Roadies was a simpler version of that, which we started off more as an experiment. And then I hired Raghu and Rajiv to come and help out. The first 2 or 3 years, it didn't really do too much. I think after year 4 or 5, it really picked up.
Like how? Yeah.
Just viewership reach, the kind of engagement. The auditions became massive after about year 3 or 4 or 5. And I think probably after I left, it probably did even better because they pushed the envelope. I was very careful. I didn't like images like, there's lots of images and lots of silly things. Like there was one thing, we'll put your hand inside a snake basket and 5 of them have cobras and 1 doesn't and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, dude, there's a forest department. There's all kinds of, we can't just do silly shit for the sake of doing silly shit. So I would tone it down a bit. I think after I left, maybe it was amped up a bit and it became...
But I started asking about brands for a reason, like whether it is the Style, MTV Style Awards or Roadies and all of these guys.
Yeah, those I did. The Style Awards was very much me.
Yeah. And then they were all very brand friendly. Right? And then, of course, cut to 7, 8, 10 years down the line and then with 101 India, etc. How is, the brands embracing content and popular culture, how has that changed in these?
I don't know if it's changed enough. I think brands understand fiction. Yeah, but they wonder within fiction, mera brand kidhar hai? Is it getting lost? Is it getting the salience an ad will give me? Because an ad is a story about a brand from beginning to end, even though it may be boring, unbelievable, or whatever, or now passe even maybe. So I think the trick is to find engagement for the brand in the right way that's relevant to the brand, and that people remember the brand somehow, somewhere in it. Yeah. And the whole overall content piece should in some way sit within the brand architecture or the brand, what it is. So I think we're still not at a very sophisticated stage in all that, because I think a lot of branded content is still more brand and less content when it should be the other way around. So that's the constant struggle it has been for the last 2 or 3 years. It's the reason why Dinner with the Dons was not sponsored. Those kind of things, I feel. So I think we're still learning. I think brand managers say the right things, but bolne mein,
Right.
do it.
Yeah. You sometime back in the conversation, you spoke about how it's now very difficult to do, that sort of cool, popular culture sort of a creation, simply because there's just so many things going on around us, right?
That's really what cool is, to me, because there's many Indias. Cool means different things to different people.
Yeah.
So traditionally we wear the hat of Western hip hop, for example, and we think, okay, that's cool. But for me, man, there's a lot of really cool things about India, which are not even about young people. There's a lot of really cool older people out there doing amazing things as well, which are equally relevant to young people. Yeah. So cool is also, in our branded content lives, is defined by what the brand manager wants. Unfortunately, the brand manager is the guy who can change the world or not. And he's usually very ill-equipped to do it. Not because he's dumb, he's just scared. He won't take the risk. He won't take the chance. He'll always put his brand up front, but nobody wants to see his brand, actually. It's not something that matters to them desperately. But you can make it matter to them if you tell them things they need to know, if you give away free things, if you make their lives better in some form. I mean, you want to give them free tickets to a concert of a cool guy, be relevant to their lives. Yeah, that's what will make young people like your brand.
Right. But if I were to just take off from that, right? Like, recently I just went to a PUBG event. Where, and you had a stint with gaming briefly as well.
Briefly, well, that's a casual gaming. I wouldn't call it gaming.
And there's some 8,800 people who had paid to come. They're all like 20 to 25-ish. And the stadium was beautiful, like 6 mega screens. And there are some 16 teams playing and about, 9,000 people watching this, right? Today, if I take a metro at any point in time, at least 80% of the people who are between 20 and 30 are just watching stuff, right? So I think, yes, there's so many things to take up your time, so many things to compete with. But there's also so many opportunities today to do stuff from a creator's perspective, right? But what do you overall, and of course there are barriers like...
The problem is the creator has to be, uske paas paise nahi hai na. That's what some of the influencers do well. They take a chance, people like them, they create their own stuff, and they gain a following. Yeah, and that's what's happening in a way. It's kind of democratic and nice in a way. I find most of it quite dumb, so it gives me a headache personally, but that's a personal opinion. I mean, my children will enjoy what I don't, so that's just the way it is. So the problem with creating things is it's still expensive. That barrier is now if you do something cheaply, if I'm just, like this podcast is not an expensive thing to create. Yeah. But if I want to go to the Chambal and meet a Don who's been pardoned by the government of India despite killing 22 people at a wedding, and I'm asking the question, excuse me, then that's a difficult thing to do for an individual. Yeah, he has to fund it, he has to sponsor it, he has to figure out if the guy will see him, he has to figure out if he'll get a return ticket, all those kind of things. So there's some content you can do easily and there's some you can't do easily, but there's so many different ways of skinning it, that you can do it cheaply, you can do it in a fun way, you can edit it, and kids are more and more proficient with their tools now. So I think you will find an interesting wave of creators who go against brands. Brands may not sponsor them, their channels, but they may sponsor them in their own environment. So I think the brand will take him out of his environment, put him into theirs and make a mess of it, but never mind.
Yeah.
Bhuvan Baum, for example, was in a McDonald's ad recently.
I think so. Yeah.
No comment, but yeah. think it probably did really well. So I should be the one slapped for that. But so I don't know. So for me, it's like they've taken him out of his environment. They haven't really sponsored his channel. Maybe they have. I don't know. But that's what I mean. They take them and make them.
And you say that in a not so good way, right? You take him out of the environment, then it is
I think so. I think the reason he's successful is because he's doing what he's doing. No? The reason when I was at MTV, people you asked me to do ads saying, "Kuch MTV style ka ad bana de." I think that's a better way to do it. It's better to go to him and say, "Boss, you have this captive audience because they like what you're doing. Here's my brand. Here's the sort of idea. Do you think you can play with this? Or think of an idea and let us know if it works." And leave him to do it then. As long as it doesn't go against, one or two basic parameters, that's the way to do it. Because that's what he's doing. It's like they go to me, I make the ad, I give them an idea and they say, sorry, this is too MTV here. It's happened.
Really?
Yeah. I was asked.
There is such a thing as 2MTV.
Yeah, I was told I was do an MTV style ad. When I did it, it was 2MTV. So I mean, whatever.
I want to finish off with a question about your choice and your taste. And I've been very impressed with the kind of choices you made throughout. Right? Like for example, I was listening to Cyrus's show with you, and that's when I first heard that. You said no to a Latin American to run MTV in Latin America. You didn't think was very cool back then.
No, I just thought I'd be a fish out of water. I mean, am I really going to go to Miami with all those suntanned bronze bodies and be able to create a show for Puff Daddy when I can actually create the Style Awards and the Emmys here in my own kind of a way? Where I would. For me, the advantage was to create this cross-cultural piece here, drawing on my culture, or a strange hybrid which I liked. Not really to go all the way to America and do something for Americans, made in America.
Right.
So it wasn't exciting. It had scale. It was very glamorous. And I thought about it from my...
You would have done Dinner with Narcos.
Yeah, no, if I'd been allowed to do that, I would have loved to. But it was about, working within that environment. And I think I would have felt like a fish out of water, because America is its own culture. Miami is its own culture. Latin America is its own culture. Now, where are you going to take a Bawaji from Gamadia colony and put him into Miami and expect that he's going to create some relevant programming for them? So I found it a bit odd. I mean, I think they were probably doing the usual corporate thing of, diversity and all that stuff, and let's promote an Indian and all that stuff. वो सब करते रहते हैं, no?
Yeah, but when you see around yourself today, what do you see that is inspiring? A show, an ad?
I don't watch too much. When you work in it, I mean, I think I watch a lot of Netflix because I like craft. Yeah, so for me, what's happening now with a lot of these apps and all the rest of it is like the death of craft and the dumbing down of content and therefore the dumbing down of people. And that's, I think, going to have some serious consequences for our life, our politics, and the way we live and think. So for me, that really bothers me. So for me, craft is very important, which is why I like to see high-budget shows on Netflix. I like, even if it's the Game of Thrones or whatever the hell it is. I mean,
what have you loved that you've seen recently? I want to end on a positive note, huh?
No, I like Peaky Blinders. I quite like that. I liked a lot of things. But mainly it's sort of Netflixy kind of shows. I like Succession very much, which is an interesting story of the Murdochs, but beautifully cast, beautifully done. I like a lot of that. Local stuff, I don't know. I believe Gully Boy is fantastic, but we did Hip Hop Homeland first. I never made any money. So it's just sour grapes.
Like I said, it's always been a constant being ahead of your time.
Yeah, next time I want to be ahead in the money stakes. I want to retire now.
Sir, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
So that was our show. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And filter_coffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, a show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.